Good morning, everyone. My name is Tu. Welcome to the podcast about the employment of translating in English language teaching. Today, we have a special guest, Assistant Professor Matthew Room at University of Miami, who co-authored a study about confronting ideologies, a discourse analysis of in-service teachers' trans-switching stance through an ecological lens. Professor, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me today on the show.
Yeah, so could you share the purpose of your study?
Well, this study explored the potential of language transformation to uproot monolingual ideologies by developing perspectives on language transformation among in-service teachers.
That's amazing. So how many research questions your study endeavor to answer?
Actually, there are two questions. Okay, we are looking for the answer. The question number one: what ideological constraints limited in-service teachers' adoption of translanguaging stance within their theory of language teaching and learning? Number two: how, if at all, did teachers adopt a translanguaging stance while working within these ideological constraints?
Well, so what are the main theories of your study?
Oh, there are two primary theories in my study, including the multilingual turn and the shifting language ideologies. Let me tell you more about them, okay? Multilingual turn focuses on how speakers use their full linguistic range in practice. Furthermore, teachers' language beliefs are shaped by macro-level, social, political orientation that favor linguistics, imperialism, and are limited by monolingualism.
From your article, there were some studies related to this issue. For example, Martinez et al. 2015 explored how teachers comprehend translanguaging. In addition, Weiss et al. 2017 found that teachers should be open to linguistic diversity before implementing classroom practices. So these previous studies propose that teachers can deploy students' language practices, but they still face a problem of personal language ideologies. So what theoretical framework did your study employ?
Okay, I used the Translanguaging classroom framework, which was proposed by Garcia Johnson and Schuler 27, with a focus on developing teacher stances as a part of the Translanguaging pedagogy.
Apart from the theoretical framework, I realized that your study also utilized Douglas for group DFG's 2016 transdisciplinary framework of second language acquisition, which views the multifaceted nature of language learning and teaching as an analytic framework. Consider systemic influences on teachers' language ideologies. So what does DFG suggest?
Okay, Dallas for group. Okay, right. DFT proposed an illogical view of language learning as an ongoing process with the three independent levels of language learning teaching, the micro, meso, and macro levels. Okay, I tell you in detail. The macro level refers to individual cognitive abilities for language development along with their semiotic resources and context for interaction. At the meso level, language learning within social cultural institutions and communities consider how these contexts influence learners' social identities and practices. And the last one, the macro level, refers to the broader social beliefs and values that influence language learning.
Well, it's fascinating. How about the methodology of your research?
Concerning research design, qualitative discourse analysis from Frau 1983 identifies important themes and particular meanings represented in graduate student translanguaging experience. Besides sorting Manning 2014 critical narrative analysis was used to consider participants' language in use at the three levels. Based on the CNAs, when individuals understand their experience through narratives, they bring together the macro personal, the macro social or institutional situation in place.
Well, so the CNI with the FG models were employed in your study, right? So regarding the research was a study conducted at the Midwest University that provides a Master of Arts degree program.
Yeah, that's correct. Okay, that's the place we conducted our study.
Yes, and now let's talk about the participants who took part in your study. So how many participants are involved in this research?
Yeah, actually, there are five in-service teachers in a graduate level TESOL certification course who were new to translanguages and the theories, pedagogies of language, and they work in urban high school French.
So in addition to participants, could you explain the procedures of data collection?
Okay, sure. Let me tell you. Our first discussion posed from the first 6 weeks when in-service teachers were reading translanguages and weekly complementary across the 6 weeks were examined. Next, their final projects were analyzed. Finally, the semi-structured phone interviews were conducted as secondary and tertiary data resources in support of answering the research question too. Each lasts 20 minutes.
So how did you analyze the data?
About analyzing the data, posts were organized into tasteful, viral coding way to analyze the constraints that in-service teachers face and how they overcame these limitations. This resulted in 24 codes for research question 1, 63 codes for research question 2. In the second round, codes were organized into 7 categories for constraints to answer the question number 1 and 6 categories for addressing these constraints to answer the research question number 2. You know, the second round codes were aligned to the DFG framework.
Wow, very detailed information about research questions. So which approach did you deploy to explore the two research questions?
Well, okay, as I told you before, okay, we utilize the social meaning 2014 critical analysis approach to discourse analysis to investigate the two questions.
Regarding the restrictions of the adoption of advanced watching stance, could you please summarize the findings from this study?
Well, I'm happy to talk about the findings. Yeah. About the micro levels constraints, it indicates that they have the limited background knowledge and experience with which to adapt the theory into their present conceptualization of how language works. So they see that their own monolingualism is in conflict with translanguaging. Besides, translanguaging seem to contradict their pedagogical language knowledge.
In addition, concerning meso-level constraints, I recognize that it's very difficult for participants to deploy a trans-switching view because it contradicts monolingual paradigms in the schools and the administrators' beliefs, right?
Yeah,
So how
that's
about
correct.
macro? Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Thank
Yeah.
you for adding that idea. Regarding the macro level constraints, participants identify the current testing and accountability system as the most prominent systemic limitation they encounter. Participants question the possibilities of translating into another language given political and economic realities, including the influence of the dominance of all English ideologies in the U.S. education system.
Now let's move on to the employment of trans-switching. At the personal level, participants adopt their prior experiences in language learning to imagine trans-switching pedagogies. Actually, they not only perceive more pluralized semiotic practices for co-construct meaning, but also imagine enacting a trans-switching funds to the meaning-making processes. How about meso-level limitations?
Well, okay, talk about the limitation, okay? Working under the meso limits in survey teacher that you know that imagine themselves resisting meso constraints in a school-based environments and they took a translanguaging approach. And for example, here with Katie and Hattie's perspective, reflect those of a translanguaging stance demonstrating not only how they position their student families and communities at resources, but also how they recognize that it requires them to challenge traditional language reflected in their schools and communities.
And more importantly, dealing with macro-level constraints enables participants to resist resource allocation while they deploy the trans-switching approach. They indicate their classroom as learning environments where they can help their students become diverse students.
Yeah, that's right. Okay, that's true.
Yeah, so now let's discuss the findings at the personal level, meso level, and macro level. So what did the results reveal at the personal level?
At the personal macro level, okay, we see how the newest of the theory, the monolingual language practices, and limited language learning classroom teaching experiences that reflect translanguaging made it difficult for in-service teachers to conceptualize translanguaging. Besides, they questioned the intent to which they could resist these meso-level norms and practices to adopt translanguaging.
Well, I agree that the findings are aligned with previous studies related to the possibilities of employing multilingualism in classroom practices. You know, transcription is viewed as a theory to stimulate teachers to disclose their language ideologies in terms of monolingualism. Also, in-service teachers could use their experiences to comprehend trans-switching. So what did the findings disclose in terms of in-service teachers' deployment of trans-switching?
Yes, okay. Data reveals that in-service teachers were able to rely on their experiences in teaching emerging bilinguals to understand translanguaging. It also indicates that the first-hand opportunities to engage with the translanguaging through the course and fieldwork better enable teachers to not only recognize how student language and cultural practices enrich each other, but also seek to create a classroom democratic where teachers and students co-create knowledge.
So learning about trans-switching enables in-service teachers to recognize the realities of monolingual ideologies in the teaching and also adopt trans-switching practices to support learners' bilingualism.
Sure, okay.
Right?
Data show that the bidirectional ecological relationship when teachers first confront monolingual ideology and adopt a translanguaging stance. Translanguaging represents a post-structural theoretical paradigm shift that has the potential to bring the light to disrupt long-held notion of pure nation-state languages, reflect in broader macro level ideologies, the meso level communities, and the micro level classroom practices.
Well, in fact, translation assists language teachers to uproot monolingual ideologies and increase their full awareness of dynamic bilingualism. So, what are the implications of your study?
Okay, well, we come to the implication. Okay, the last part of our
Yes.
discussion, right? First of
Yes.
all, teacher reparation and development should provide educators with opportunities to examine their language ideologies and pedagogies from an ecological perspective. Secondly, teacher educators should introduce students to the theory of translanguages and dynamic bilingualism, embed activities and assignments that would allow teachers to arrive at a better understanding of their wrong language ideologies and how they might shape their future instructions. Yes, that's either,
What is
yeah.
more, yeah. What is more, language teachers should conceptualize the theory about transwitching and employ it in their classroom practices. You know, future research should observe how in-service teachers apply transwitching in their teaching,
Definitely,
right?
yes. Yeah. Translanguaging breaks down the imagined boundaries between languages and recognize the multilingualism as one cohesive system. And finally, translanguaging can create transformative educational spaces where students' multilingual identities and practices are central.
Mm. Furthermore, transcription allows teachers to examine ways that enhance students' use of transcription in their classrooms. Frankly speaking, your study employed discourse analysis to examine learning outcomes among 5 in-service teachers, acknowledge what ideological constraints limited their deployment of transformation in teaching and how they solved this problem. The results disclose that 3 aforementioned levels have a detrimental impact on in-service teachers' employment of transforming and effective ways to overcome these limitations. Thank you very much, Professor, for your sharing today.
Okay, you're welcome. It's my pleasure to be here with you today. Okay, on the show. Thank you.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you and goodbye.
Thank you and goodbye.
Yeah, goodbye.